She laid down next to me and began putting her hands all over me.
And I was just wondering if the people at the academy there or at the parish were aware of what took place with you and Julia Rose?
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I have the settlement.
Sex abuse by nuns. Shocking. It's something Church Militant has never reported on until now. The nuns in question are closely affiliated with the Society of St. Pius X, the FSSPX, a traditional priestly group notorious for sheltering, shuffling, promoting, and protecting predator clergy. In my hands, I hold the settlement agreement and the $83,000 check written to Julia Rose, a young female victim of these nuns. This is Julia's.
My parents divorced when I was very young. My father converted from atheism to the Society of St. Pius X. And right around 1988, my mom was in an insane asylum with a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia.
Julia Rose was just a child when her father moved their family to Post Falls, Idaho, to join an SSPX community. Around 1991, traditionalist nuns in France planned to start up a new academy in Post Falls.
They work very closely with the SSPX at all of their schools in France, at least from when I was there, and then Post Falls.
They're known as the Sisters of the Holy Name of Jesus of Fanjeau, founded in 1800 in Toulouse, France. In 1885, they became formally affiliated with the Dominican Order. Fast forward to 1975, during the liturgical turmoil following Vatican II. Some of the sisters broke off from the congregation to form their own community in Fanjeau, in southern France.
Et donc en 1975, Mère Anne-Marie Simoulin est partie de la congrégation pour pouvoir conserver la transmission de la foi catholique aux enfants et la messe. Ça a été la bataille, encore une fois, la bataille de la messe. Donc elles sont parties à Fanjeau, qui est le lieu où Saint-Dominique a été pendant 10 ans. Il s'est installé donc dans le village même de Fanjeau. Là aussi, c'était providentiel.
They came to associate with Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre and the priestly group he founded, the SSPX, a close association that continues to this day. These Dominicans are not technically religious. As their website states, the sisters belong to the Third Order of St. Dominic. In other words, they're laity, except they live in community and wear habits. According to their self-description, school life will be characterized above all by an atmosphere of honesty in every sense of the word, of trust and openness, of enthusiasm and joy. A little girl today, a valiant woman tomorrow. They have schools in France, Germany, and Switzerland. Their first school in the U.S. was in Post Falls and is called St. Dominic. Here in the U.S., they call themselves the Teaching Sisters of St. Dominic.
I would have been 12. There were 52 students that year and 7 nuns. I think they rented classrooms from a Protestant church because we didn't have space anymore, and then we would walk down to the Immaculate Conception every day for daily Mass.
Immaculate Conception Chapel is run by the SSPX. It was the site of a major sex abuse scandal in 2015, with former SSPX seminarian Kevin Sloniker arrested for raping and abusing underage boys over the course of 10 years.
Little emotion moved across 30-year-old Kevin Sloniker's face as he entered a courtroom in Kootenai County this afternoon. He's charged with abusing young boys in both Idaho and Washington over the last decade. Court documents reveal one of the victims claimed there were 60 separate incidents spanning over a 6-year period. Investigators say Sloniker was involved with youth camps here at Immaculate Conception Church in Post Falls. That's where they say he met several of his victims.
Sloniker was once a seminarian at the SSPX's St. Thomas Aquinas Seminary in Winona, Minnesota, but was kicked out after he tried to circumcise himself. He was labeled mentally unstable. Instead of cutting ties, the SSPX let him continue to be involved in its Post Falls chapel, training altar boys at Immaculate Conception. That's where he found his victims. One was an 11-year-old boy, raped by Sloniker over the course of 6 years. While Sloniker was ultimately convicted for assaulting 2 boys, he confessed he had abused 9. In one case, he told a victim to strip naked as he whipped him. The victim reported the abuse to SSPX priest Father Patrick Crane, who dismissed it, failing to report it to police. Sloniker was convicted and sentenced to life in prison.
I expected that church, my church, to protect me. That's what I was taught that the church was there for.
Why do you think the priests did nothing?
They were too scared, or they were trying to protect the church, or I don't know.
The priests in Post Falls lied. Among them, Father Paul Vassal, falsely claiming Sloniker left in 2006, when in fact he continued to have contact with the SSPX school as late as 2013, where he found a new victim. The priests also lied that he'd confessed and turned himself in, when it was the complaint of a victim's mother, which led to his arrest. The priests lied that they had never been told of any abuse.
Men från SSPX slutna värld hörde ingen av sig till polisen och övergreppen pågick i nästan 10 år. För prästerna såg inget, hörde inget och visste inget. It says here, prior to Mr. Sloniker's confession to the police, the priests in Post Falls were never informed of any...
That is an incorrect statement. That is an incorrect statement.
How are you so sure?
My dad went and spoke to them.
Just a few years later, Sloniker's own brother, Paul, also heavily involved in the SSPX, would be arrested in 2019 and charged with 9 counts of child sex abuse, including child rape. He pled guilty to 1 count of child molestation in 2022. As to Father Vassal, he was quietly sent away from Post Falls to the SSPX seminary in Dillwyn, Virginia, where he remains today. Back in 2016, Vassal gave an interview confirming the SSPX's continuing close relationship with the Dominican Sisters. We are happy to give our support and aid to the Dominican Sisters of Post Falls by giving them the holy sacrifice of the Mass and the sacraments. How soon after that would you say the grooming began?
So, things were really rough at home with my dad. I mean, it was so rough that my mom, still diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic, was awarded custody over my sister, over my dad, like taken away from my dad, because he was abusive. He was physically abusive. And it was to the point where one time he choked me, and I got out, ran to the neighbors.
After another violent outburst from her dad, Julia ran away again. The only number she knew to call was that of the Dominican Sisters. Mother Marie Reginald, whose real name is Ellen Penelope Betts, showed up, took Julia home, helped pack her bags, and brought her to St. Dominic's.
So he agreed to just pay the money every month for my tuition, for my room and board, to make decisions over me. Collectively, they decided that was better than a single male raising a teenage daughter, especially under those circumstances. So the grooming began pretty soon after that.
It started with little things. Mother Marie Reginald would spend extra time helping Julia with homework, paying her special attention, showering her with compliments, telling her again and again how smart she was. One day, as they were chatting outside Mother's room, according to Julia, Mother Marie Reginald made it physical.
And she gave me what she used to refer to as a bear hug, and I was just frozen, just my arms down, and I didn't hug her back. And she commented on that she felt like I didn't know how to reciprocate affection because I had never had it.
Julia was about 14. But she knows you're vulnerable. She knows you come from a broken home.
Yes.
She kind of takes you under her wing.
Excessive attention, and things seemed like they went really fast from her starting to take an attention to me to just all the time, like seeing her all of the time, getting notes from her all of the time, hugs all of the time, holding hands, interlocked hands together.
When would she hold your hand?
Either when she'd come and sit and talk with me in my room.
So she'd come to your room and privately talk with you and hold your hand while she's talking?
Yes,
okay.
We'd sit on the edge of my bed. We did a lot of walks and hikes together.
And she would also hold your hand during those walks and hikes?
Yep, when we would stop and sit down and take a break.
Did she hug you a lot?
All the time, yep. I believe hugging became a daily thing.
Did she hug any of the other students?
Not all the time, I imagine.
Did she hold hands with any of the other students?
No.
Did she go and visit the other students, give them notes, things like that?
No.
Mother Marie's attentions became infatuation. She would leave personal notes for Julia at her desk or hand them to her in passing, sometimes slipping them under her door. She also gave her many gifts. That's JR.
So it's JR embroidered for me by Mother Marie Reginald. And it's, it's again a table napkin. I don't know if this one's embroidered or not. She made actual skirts for me that she sewed as well. One of them was kind of similar to that design. It was the same material.
Okay.
Just another one here. That's just a plain table napkin. All these covers she sewed for me, and then sewed the little rose on there for identification going through the wash. I had multiple handkerchiefs of hers. Her name is Ellen Betts, so this handkerchief has her name sewn on it. This was her property. I threw away all the other ones.
Her gift giving even extended to her childhood medals and ribbons.
So she was a gymnast, and she gave me medals from, this one doesn't have a date, but essentially from when she was a child/teenager.
Did she tell you why you were getting these gifts from her? These are things that she had from her childhood.
Yeah.
Why would she be giving them to you? She's a nun. She's a sister. You're a student. Why would she give them to you?
She thought I would like them, to have them. I felt privileged.
Perhaps the strangest thing Mother Marie did was invent a code word to communicate her infatuation.
And that code word was tree, so T-R-E-E.
So she pulled you aside privately one day and said,
told me that
my code word to tell you that I love you is the word tree.
Correct.
So whenever you see the word tree or you hear it, I'm really saying
I love you.
Okay.
Yes. And in her notes even, she would oftentimes put, tree freely, tree purely.
She would speak the word tree at random times. She would compose poems with the word tree.
This was Christmas tree at the bottom. And it says, tree freely, tree purely, forever unto God, and the end without end, your mother.
So that really means I love you freely, I love you purely. Yeah. Mother Marie even put the code in the school newsletter.
But this one, she begins the note with, "Dear Julia, you must find a Christmas tree in the next newsletter."
The code was found in the first letter of each paragraph, which would spell out the word tree. She inserted this code into several newsletters. Her grooming and abuse went on for years until another sister stepped in and took things farther. It was 1997, Julia's junior year. She fell ill with a 103-degree fever and bad cough. The nurse made a makeshift bed for her in the rec room where she could convalesce. One night, alone in that large room, she looked over at the door and saw someone approaching.
I didn't know who it was until this person came up close to me and said, I brought you some extra pillows to prop yourself up if you need them. And that's...
Take your time.
That's when I recognized that it was Mother Rose of Lima.
Mother Rose of Lima's real name is Dorothea Epke Sullivan. She spent 10 years with the Dominicans before getting ousted over sexual scandals. But while there, she was a popular and beloved sister who enjoyed socializing with parents and students.
And she was not in her habit. She was in her nightgown with her bathrobe over it. And she laid down next to me and began putting her hands all over me. And I just laid there stiff as a board.
The assault was detailed in a January 18, 2006 letter written by Julia, sent to St. Dominic School.
During the next 45 minutes or so, she also laid down by me and proceeded to sexually molest me by touching, rubbing, and petting my breasts and pelvis area. Not only was I sick and without resistance ability, but I had never had any sexual contact with any person, and this event completely surprised me. I had no idea what was happening to me. I was tense, completely silent, and unable to react to this authority figure taking advantage of me. From that point on, Sister Rose of Lima became obsessed with me. Mother Rose of Lima was relentless. She would come to my room all the time. I would lock the door. She would knock and knock and knock till I'd open it. If I didn't open it, she'd go into the storage closet, which was right next to my room.
Like Mother Marie Reginald, Sister Rose of Lima also developed a code word for I love you.
So THREE.
So Mother Mary Reginald's code word for you was tree, to say I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sister Rose of Lima's code word to say I love you is three.
Correct.
Very coincidental.
Correct. And so when I wouldn't unlock my door, she'd go to that storage closet and tap on the wall. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Like to an insane amount of times.
Sister Rose would use spiritual talk to convince her what they were doing was approved by God, claiming that the more you sin, the more Jesus loves you, because there's more room for his grace and forgiveness. She'd also repeat the phrase, exultet, oh, happy fault, a quote from St. Augustine indicating the fall of Adam and Eve and the blessings God brought about as a result of their sin. It's a phrase uttered during the Easter liturgies.
It went on over a span of like 6 weeks, and it got really bad. Sister Rose of Lima continued to pursue me. begging me to come to her room in the middle of the night, resulting in subsequent events of more intense sexual activity with her. I felt extremely sinful, guilty, but on the other hand, this sister was my mentor, and I had always completely respected and obeyed her. The mixed feelings were excruciating.
Sister Rose admitted to Julia she'd been watching her since she was 14. According to Julia, Sister Rose revealed to her a sex scandal she'd been involved in years before, back when she was a student at the SSPX Academy, St. Mary's in Kansas. St. Mary's is the largest SSPX community in the U.S., first establishing a chapel and a school there in 1978. St. Mary's consecrated its Immaculata Chapel in May 2023, the largest SSPX chapel in the world, a $42 million project that took years to complete. Former Superior General Bishop Bernard Fillet presided over the ceremony, where 120 SSPX clergy and brothers attended, along with 3,000 laypeople. But behind the pious facade lies a troubling history of abuse, the focus of our reporting in a 2020 spotlight. It was Angles who Michael Gonzalez identified as having sodomized him when he was 14 years old, confiding his terrible secret to his oldest sister.
And then finally, he broke down one day and he just started crying and he told me who it was. And he had confided in me and told me it was Father Angles.
But Angles is only one among multiple SSPX clergy now under a statewide criminal probe for sexual grooming, rape, pederasty, and other crimes, with a cover-up reaching to the highest levels of leadership. From St. Mary's, Kansas, to Eugene, Oregon, to Post Falls, Idaho, to Belgium, France, the Philippines, and beyond, all around the globe, the SSPX has covered up numerous cases of sex abuse over decades, much of it kept hidden because whistleblowers say they're punished and victims shamed.
Julia says Mother Rose engaged in a homosexual affair at St. Mary's. SSPX priest Father Hervé de la Tour, former rector of St. Mary's, found out. Dorothea then went on to the Dominicans of Fanjeau in France, after Father de la Tour reportedly wrote a glowing letter of recommendation.
And he knew of it, and he actually wrote her a letter that helped convince the nuns accept her into the convent. So he played a big role in following her around for many, many years, and trying to help keep things quiet.
Father de la Tour is also implicated in covering up sex abuse at St. Mary's. As Turkmilta reported in our spotlight, SSPX cover-up continues. Fellow French SSPX priest Father Pierre Duverger was accused by multiple young women of sexual grooming and assault, including a 12-year-old girl he was counseling in France, an emotionally and psychologically damaged girl who turned to her priest for help and who instead used her trauma for his own sexual gratification.
Father Duverger focused on explicit and sexual details.
Duverger was also in the habit of engaging in late-night FaceTime sessions with girls he was counseling, sometimes calling past midnight, sending numerous selfies, some of them shown here. He would ask the girls to call him Daddy, at times signing off by saying, "Daddy loves you." He would even ask them to appear in their underwear. After a different sex scandal involving another young woman he was counseling, Duverger was yanked out of Bordeaux, France, and sent to New Mexico. Bishop Fillet claimed it was for reasons of health. Duverger did a couple years of prayer and penance before getting a promotion, working at SSPX U.S. District Headquarters in Missouri. Father de la Tour knew about Duverger's past, but kept his secrets at St. Mary's, never warning victims, never reporting him to police. Duverger reportedly went on to abuse other girls in Kansas. Today, he teaches at the SSPX Academy in Sanford, Florida. And according to a whistleblower, de la Tour also knew about a St. Mary's parishioner accused of raping his own daughter. 3 SSPX priests, Father Todd Angeli, Father Hervé de Latour, and Father Kenneth Novak, refused to help one of Palmieri's abuse victims, who was molested from age 8 to 15. Palmieri engaged in oral sex as well as sexual intercourse with her. In fact, both Angeli, pastor of Assumption Chapel at the time, and de Latour told her and her then-fiancé Kyle White, who spoke with Church Militant, that it would be a mortal sin to report Palmieri, as it would ruin his reputation.
I was so disgusted by her and the things that she was doing. I was unable to eat. I was unable to sleep. I was unable to do my studies. I lost 35, 40 pounds in a really short amount of time.
One day, when SSPX Bishop Richard Williamson came to visit the school, Julia worked up the courage to report her abuse.
And he said, as soon as you leave here, I want you to go to Sister Rosalima's room, tell her you've told me, and that you're going to go talk to Mother Gabriel, who was Mother Prioress at the time. And so I did.
So I just want to repeat that. You went to Bishop Williamson, who was at the time part of the SSPX. Later on, he obviously went and broke off and started the Resistance. But you told him of your abuse, the sexual abuse happening. And the way he chose to handle it was, he told you, the victim, to confront your abuser, tell your abuser that you're going to blow the whistle.
In her bedroom.
Privately in her bedroom.
Bishop Williamson never reported the assault allegations to police, leaving the burden on the young victim to handle it herself. As to be expected, the confrontation did not go well, with Sister Rose of Lima running to the prioress Mother Gabriel's room and blaming Julia for everything. For her part, Julia told Mother Gabriel the truth about the abuse. Julia reports that the prioress chose to handle it by kicking Julia out of school, while allowing Sister Rose to stay.
Where is your docility? Where is your obedience?
Mother Gabriel asked Julia in a 1997 letter.
Unless you become truly docile and obedient, not only this problem won't be resolved for the best, but you do endanger your whole life.
She went on to note,
the key for peace and salvation, thorough submission, without questioning. Until you come to this very submission, it is better for you not to come back.
Aside from the inappropriate relations with Sister Rose, she also acknowledged the, quote,
many signs, many hints that the situation created between Sister Marie Reginald and you had more harmful consequences than we were ready to imagine and believe. But it is real.
From Julia's 2006 letter.
Rather than receiving counseling, sympathy, and/or apologies, I was made to feel as though it were my fault. Mother Gabriel ordered that I go away to Texas to live with a specific family, which I refused to do. I left Post Falls for a time, but could not come to a resolution of my situation. Over the next few years, I tried to tell other priests and nuns, but I was treated as some sort of pariah, told to forget, to move on with my life, etc.
Sister Rose of Lima was sent back to the Dominicans in France. Fast forward 9 years to 2006. Mother Gabriel was forced to apologize for the way she mishandled the incident.
I wish to acknowledge on behalf of Mother General, the congregation, and myself, our lack of experience in dealing with such events as you reported in early 1997. When you reported the events to me, I was shocked, horrified, and saddened that such an event had happened to you at our school. Both our congregation and I have learned that there are better ways that we could have addressed this for you.
The apology came after Julia submitted a formal complaint to the school, detailing her abuse. The Dominican sisters agreed to pay her $83,000 in exchange for her promise not to sue the community. The agreement also imposed silence, a confidentiality clause banning Julia from speaking about the terms of the settlement with anyone. After 17 years of silence, Julia has finally chosen to speak, knowing that silence only benefits the perpetrators, not the victims.
I do know that when Mother Rosalima was sent back to France for her back, she immediately engaged in sexual activities with this nun in the novitiate who had been her former student prior to her ending up in the States.
So what did they do with her then?
They told her she had 24 hours to leave the convent.
The Dominican sisters kicked her out once and for all.
They set her up with a place to live in Veneta, Oregon, a job to teach at the society school in Veneta, Oregon, and $1,000 a month for a year to say thank you for your service in our convent.
So even after knowing about her sexual abuse of you, and then engaging in sexual relations with one of the novices in France, they still put her in a post in a school with access to children and paid her.
Yes.
Losing her religious name, Sister Rose of Lima went back to being Dorothea Epke, reinventing herself and going on to get married to John Sullivan, with whom she's had 6 children. While she's no longer teaching, she remains heavily involved in the school. We tracked Dorothea down and spoke with her.
And I was just wondering if the people at the academy there or at the parish were aware of what took place with you and Julia Rose.
May I ask who's calling?
This is Christine Niles from St. Michael's Media, church militant.
I have no idea.
You have no idea?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I have the settlement.
Dorothea followed up with a text message. I do not teach at any school. I do not wish to discuss with you anything about the Dominicans. This reporter followed up with a series of texts. Do you have any message for your victim? Any message of apology or contrition? Do you have any idea how the abuse she suffered at your hands affected the rest of her life? No response. Incidentally, Veneta happens to be the site of another SSPX sex abuse scandal involving local millionaire and benefactor James Zimmerman, who did 4 years behind bars for sexually assaulting 2 underage girls. The SSPX community blamed the victims while rallying around the abuser.
The abuse he committed was outlined in a 14-count indictment. It showed the abuse of the minor girls occurred at the SSPX-run St. Thomas Becket Academy and occurred not just on school property, but also during school hours. Zimmerman even placing a sleeping bag in a room next to the church bell tower, where he would assault one of the girls. Zimmerman had free reign at the school and church, unquestioned access, owing to his $700,000 donation and close association with various SSPX priests he would take on frequent trips to his vacation home in Alaska.
Meanwhile, Mother Marie Reginald, also known as Ellen Penelope Betts, is now head of Sacred Heart Academy in Walton, Kentucky, with full access to children.
Yes, hi, I'm trying to get in touch with Mother Marie Reginald.
Yes,
My name is Christine Niles.
good. May I take a little bit of a message just to give a heads up? She might not be available to you.
Well, I'm calling about a former student of hers.
Okay, very good. Okay.
She kept us on hold for a full 3 minutes.
May I ask where you're calling from?
Yes, I'm calling from Church Militant. I'm a reporter. I have a question for her about a former student of hers.
Good. May I ask what the name of this former student is?
It's private. I need to speak with her about it.
Okay, very good. And may I ask a little bit more about Church Militant?
I'm a reporter for Church Militant. We're a Catholic media organization.
May I also take a phone number?
Sure. I am on deadline, so I would need her to get back to me as soon as possible.
Good.
And I want to give her a chance to respond.
After leaving us on hold for another full minute, the receptionist returned to tell us Mother Marie Reginald declined to speak with us. When we asked for an email address to email questions, the receptionist said no.
Her utter refusal, I'm just letting you know, looks like perpetuation of the cover-up and lack of transparency. So
I'm very sorry that you feel that way.
You don't even have an email address that you can give me just to email the question to her.
I'm so sorry.
Is there a reason you don't want to let me email you?
Julia turned to SSPX priests in the 2000s, seeking help. Among them, Father Patrick Crane, the same one who failed to report Sloniker's abuse. According to Julia, Crane visited her one night when she was drinking and suicidal. She told him all about her abuse, weeping and hoping he would help. Nothing was ever done. He referred her to Father Patrick Summers, to whom she also confided her abuse. Again, nothing was done.
While I still hold my faith in God, my confidence and trust in the Dominicans and priests of the SSPX, organizations I once held in the highest regard and esteem, have been completely destroyed. My abilities to develop trusting and loving relationships with others and to lead a normal, productive life have been devastated. I've been on a path of healing for a long time, and I know that unfortunately these things are in a lot of places, and they happen. They should never happen, but they do, and they probably always will. However, had the adults and the authority handled it in a proper way, my life would be so much different. It's so much less suffering and pain, and so many fewer patterns and cycles of me returning to abusive situations.
After the alleged abuse, Julia engaged in unhealthy relationships, bearing several children out of wedlock. She's currently undergoing therapy to help heal her past trauma, and she's taking small steps to return to the practice of the faith. She's devoted to raising her children with a love that she never had. Meanwhile, Church Militant reached out to the Dominicans, who would not speak with us. We also contacted the SSPX in Veneta, Oregon, to ask why they allowed an accused sexual predator to teach at their academy for years with free access to children. We also asked if they planned to launch an investigation to determine whether Dorothea might have other victims. No response. Same goes for U.S. District Superior Father John Fullerton, as well as SSPX spokesman James Vogel. Bishop Richard Williamson also failed to return any of our queries. Across the board, silence. We did learn, however, that the SSPX and the Dominicans broke their silence with regard to Julia, reaching out to her to pressure her not to go through with this story. Clearly, she rejected their attempts in the hopes her story will help other victims come forward and find healing and help bring an end to the abuse. Christine Niles, Church Militant,